Hey everybody, we're back here at DNM with another Facebook Live, and thanks for joining us on a Monday morning. We were going to do this last week because there was one of our posts got a lot of what I would call negative attention on Facebook, and that's usually what we're best at, is getting negative attention. And you know, we thought, oh yeah, we should do a Facebook Live on this, and then we got busy and it kind of faded into the sunset. And then really it's because I wasn't angry enough, because sometimes I get a little bit angry about these things. And so I just received this email right now that got me a little bit revved up again. So I think it's really, really important that we, I'm not here to defend our position on vaccination so much as to help you all navigate the very, very murky waters, because there's a problem. There's a big problem going on right now, I think, in the conventional veterinary world, and that is the issue of over-vaccination. And I want to take a moment to, I guess I'm going to start with this. I'm going to talk about what the problem is and why we repeatedly harp on this subject. So what happened was, back in the late 90s, they found out that cats were getting cancer or fibrosarcoma right on their vaccine sites. So the veterinary associations and the kindly sponsored by the pharmaceutical companies who made these vaccines, I should probably point that out, they all got together and they said, wow, okay, here's this problem that we have right now. Cats are actually getting cancer right where we vaccinate them. So they got all these experts together, and they had all their sponsors, and they did this big committee meeting, and at the end of it, the decision was this: yes, we recognize that cats are getting cancer at their vaccine sites, and here's our solution. Let's vaccinate them in the tails, because they're easier to lop up if they get cancer, right? It wasn't, let's look at the safety of our vaccines, let's vaccinate less often. Really, that was the whole big result of that study. Now, at the same time, there was a study in Italy that found that dogs were also getting cancer at their vaccine sites. So all of this together, along with some research, prompted some changes, very, very good changes in the veterinary world. Because at the same time that they're finding out that vaccines can have unwanted consequences for our animals, there was a researcher by the name of Dr. Ronald Schultz, and he's just recently retired, but over the last almost 40 years, what he set out to do was prove that once a dog was protected with a vaccine, that protection would last for a very, very long time. And it stands to reason, because if a dog were to get sick from parvovirus naturally, they would never get it again. If you get chickenpox naturally, you never get it again. So he hypothesized that vaccines would confer lifelong immunity to dogs and cats. And then he set out to prove it. And over the next nearly 40 years, he repeated his research over and over and over again on over 1,000 dogs, and with every major core vaccine on the market. And what he found was the core vaccines, parvovirus, distemper, and adenovirus, all protected dogs for a minimum of 7 to 15 years. Now, this was very much reflected in the length of his studies, not necessarily how long the vaccines lasted. And he proved this both by challenging the dogs, so taking a vaccinated dog and putting it in a room full of sick dogs, and finding out that they weren't getting sick. And he also established this by serology. So he took blood titer tests to see if there were circulating antibodies for those vaccines. So around the time that the associations were looking at the dogs and cats getting cancer and other health issues from vaccines, here they had this research from Dr. Ronald Schultz. And this prompted them to take a look at what they were doing with vaccines. Because what happened was, when vaccine manufacturers made vaccines and they said, okay, here's a distemper vaccine, go use it, it was their responsibility to guarantee a certain amount of time that vaccine would protect for. So what they did was they tested the vaccine for a few weeks or maybe a couple of months, and they said, okay, we guarantee this vaccine will protect your animal for a year. That's our guarantee. And so vets got into the habit of vaccinating every year. But there was no scientific validity to doing this, okay? There was no research studies that showed that vaccines don't protect after a year or don't protect after 3 years, okay? So when they had all this information together, they formed a task force. And in 2003, the AHA and the AVMA came out with revaccination guidelines. And in a nutshell, they said, yes, we should not be vaccinating every year. We should be vaccinating every 3 years. We consider that to be protective. That was back in 2003. In the meantime, Dr. Ronald Schultz is still churning out this research, testing every vaccine on the market, and time again, that research is reliable, it's valid. He's getting the same results in more than 95% of the dogs that they are protected for a very, very long time, and most likely for life. Now, why the associations chose the 3-year interval is unknown. What Dr. Richard Ford was on that task force, and he said that the 3-year interval was completely arbitrary. Okay, it was a number that vets thought that they could live with. There was no science behind it, none. They've updated those recommendations over the year, and most recently in 2011, the guidelines still say that you shouldn't vaccinate any more than every 3 years, and that 5 or more years is probably good. Again, 5 or more years is another arbitrary number. There's no research saying that 5 years is the proper revaccination schedule. And the funny thing is that in these same guidelines, they say that we recognize that immunity in most cases lasts much longer than our current revaccination schedules, and most likely for life. Okay? So what's our problem with all of this? Our problem is twofold. First of all, every 3 years is still too often. There is no research that shows that vaccines need to be done that often. The second problem that we have is that one of the employees for one of the major pharmaceutical companies, one of their salespeople, reports that over 60% of vets are still vaccinating annually. All right? So I want to make this very, very clear. We have tons of research showing that vaccines last for a very, very long time, at least 7 to 15 years for the core vaccines. On the other side, there is no research showing that an animal, once he's protected with one of the core vaccines, needs to be vaccinated ever again. So we've been spending the last several years telling you people about this because it's important, because your dogs are being vaccinated too often. And when that happens, it delivers all of the risk and none of the reward. And Dr. Ronald Schultz has also said every time you vaccinate an animal, you better have a really, really good reason for doing so, because every vaccine has the potential to kill your dog. So, was it a couple of weeks ago, I think, Kalen? We put it July 29th. No, July 31st, because we were talking about that. So, we put one of our articles out there, and we called it, okay, honestly, we probably could have been a little bit less
incendiary.
Yeah, it was a little bit inflammatory. But basically, we said why vets are getting away with murder. But I stand by that title, and by vets, I mean the profession as a whole. There's not any individual vet, to my knowledge, that thinks, hey, I'm going to vaccinate a dog into oblivion because I don't like dogs. I mean, it's ridiculous to assume that's the case. But as a profession, the veterinary profession has a terrible track record when it comes to understanding immunology and vaccinating according to science, and at the very least, following their association guidelines, right? So we got a lot of backlash from vets over that article. And here's what prompted me to kind of hop on here today. I just received an email from the editor of a publication for veterinarians and vet techs in Europe. And she forwarded an email that one of their vet techs, I guess, or vets, I'm not sure, had written. And basically, I'm not going to read the whole email very obviously, but it kind of goes like this. They want to know why they're subjected to online trolling and why large-scale magazines with a large following like us are allowed to write articles like this that slander the profession and what they stand for. I know that veterinarians stand for health. I know they do. But the problem is, what they are doing is absolutely detrimental to health. It is wrong, it is unscientific, and I don't know why they're standing together and defending this right to the death. A lot of vets take exception because I kind of say, I don't think I say this. Basically, I say, I don't know why veterinarians are doing what they're doing, why they're over-vaccinating. It could be for profit. I don't know. I really don't know. What I do know is they should just stop doing it already. And I'll tell you this. I get a lot of emails from vets saying, how dare you say we do it for profit, right? And I say back to them, and I absolutely believe this, I would rather that you were just rats and did it out of greed, because then we could spot you from a mile away. Because the biggest problem that we have is that you guys are either intentionally ignoring research or are completely oblivious to it and taking our money and vaccinating our dogs with unnecessary vaccinations. That makes you a charlatan. And believe me, that's worse than being a crook. It's worse than being a crook. So this is why I get angry. Am I angry at any individual vet? No, of course not. I am so angry with the association because they're putting these guidelines out here that are based on sound science, and they're not doing anything about it. All of these vets are vaccinating more often than the guidelines recommend, and they're not doing anything. They're just looking the other way. They're letting them. And the vaccine manufacturers, if you open up one of the label inserts, do you know what it says? It says, yeah, this will last for 3 years, but you, the vet, you're the expert. You get to make the final call on that. The fox is watching the hen house, guys, and this needs to stop. So our job, my job, and everybody here at Dogs Naturally is to help to educate you guys so that you know what's going on. I would never tell you, don't vaccinate your dog. A lot of people accuse us of being anti-vaccine. We're not. We're anti-stupid, right? We're anti-stupid. We are pro-science. And that's another thing we get confused of. We're saying, here's the science, and vets are vaccinating on very, very unscientific, right, unproven schedules. And it's up to us to help you guys understand that, so that the next time your dog or cat gets hauled in for a booster, then you can, all you need to do is go to the AHA or the AVMA guidelines and say, why? Why are you vaccinating my dog more often than your guidelines recommend? You know, and so we got a lot of backlash on this article, and by and large, the emails that I receive from vets go something like this. And again, I'm not vet bashing. I am veterinary profession bashing. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm frustrated because we get emails every day. I get these really, really nasty emails that say, you know, you guys are BS artists, right? And what you're saying is absolutely untrue. And I'll write them back and I'll say, oh, okay, so let me know exactly what part of this article needs to be rectified. Please bring me the science and the research that proves that what I'm saying is wrong. You got to tell me specifically what's wrong and what's right. And by and large, I get crickets when I ask for that. What are some of the comments that we're getting on that Facebook post, Steph?
We're getting quite a few vets that have piped up, and vet techs as well. This one, so I think this was the first one that really set things off. It says, I take it this author is not a veterinarian, and I would like to ask, if she is so smart, why not go ahead and become a doctor?
Can I actually answer that?
Yeah.
All right. I don't think you. But by the way, I have a university degree in physiology and one in animal behavior. So, no, I'm not a veterinarian, but I absolutely am very, very good at looking at research and understanding what's valid, what's reliable, and what's well constructed. And I can tell you without a benefit, without like any doubt, without a shred of doubt, that it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that there's no research backing these annual and even triennial vaccine schedules, but there's reams of research showing that they're completely unnecessary. What else have we got?
I hope nobody pays any attention to this ridiculous article. I've been a veterinary nurse for 20 years, and the thought of having to look after dogs with distemper, parvo, and lepto fills me with dread. They are horrible, mostly fatal diseases. We don't see these diseases very often nowadays. Why? Regular vaccination of pets, all in caps.
Okay, got it. So here's my frustration, and I really do hope some vets are watching so that we can have some good dialogue. Because here's my frustration, is that I know the headline is inflammatory, I get it. But when you read the article, you've got to understand that we're crying for you. We want, believe me, I know you guys. I know vets have it bad because you see dogs that are neglected and abused, and people bring their dogs in to say, oh, can you euthanize Fred because we're getting hardwood floors tomorrow. I know you have some really, really crappy parts of your job. I have crappy parts of my job too, and those crappy parts are every single morning in my inbox. I'm seeing emails from people with vaccine damaged dogs with huge tumors right on vaccine sites, puppies that are actually getting distemper or parvovirus from the vaccines, right? They actually took these puppies died, and they took them to the labs, and they found out that the virus was vaccine strain. It wasn't wild strain. I get these emails every day, and it upsets me too, and it upsets me that, again, the association is doing nothing about it. Going back to this email here, basically this veterinarian is saying that she or he feels physically sick that people are allowed to write such hurtful, horrible things such as we're doing. And I don't think we're being hurtful, and I don't think we're being horrible. Here's what we're about. I don't think we're asking a lot. We're not asking a lot. The only thing we're asking is that if you're going to take our money, right, as a professional, if we're going to trust you as a professional, then you should, at the very minimum, follow your association recommendations. It's not a lot to ask. It's really not a lot to ask. I don't know what else to say, guys. What else have I got to say?
Just some people saying, oh, bite me, dogs naturally post a lot of crap that is just not true.
Yeah, see, and this bothers me, because what we hear from a lot of veterinarians and vet techs is we go to school for a lot of years, we pay a lot for our education, and you should be treating us like professionals. And my reply is, well, when you're confronted with this information, you should probably start acting like professionals. And that means, A, when it comes to pointing the finger, don't point it at us, don't point it at the people who are following us. Once in a while, you got to point the finger right back in the mirror and realize that maybe, just maybe, part of the reason that half of dogs today are going to get cancer is because of the over-servicing that we're giving them. And the other thing, believe me, do you not understand, and I'm sure a lot of you there understand this, how terrible it feels to have a sick dog, and not just be worried about your sick dog, but worry about taking them to the vets because you're worried that they're going to take them in the back and vaccinate them before they have surgery, or you're worried they're not going to do anything to that dog before they vaccinate them, which is ludicrous because it takes a dog a good 10 to 14 days to respond to that vaccine anyway. It's another thing that's unscientific. You know, I did like a quick, this was interesting. So CBC called me up for an interview a little while back, and there was a parvo outbreak just north of us, and they asked me for my feedback on this. And basically I said, look, if your dog's protected, man, he's protected. Just run a tighter test and don't freak out. What I didn't know was that they were going to get a vet to respond to my comments, and what a vet they got to respond. So I thought it was completely unfair that this vet was allowed to reply to my comments, but I wasn't allowed to see his comments and reply to them. So, but what they did was they said, okay, here's the lady that wears a tinfoil hat and edits Dogs Naturally magazine. Here's her comment, right? And now we're going to get the veterinary expert's comment. And basically the veterinary expert said that I had no science, and it was cute, you know, what I was doing, but I wasn't a licensed professional, so I wasn't qualified to make these kinds of calls, and I'm not. But I will tell you this, I am completely qualified to warn you to stay away from a certain subset of veterinarians. Because this particular veterinarian, if I go to his website, this is crazy, right? So we know that the associations say don't vaccinate any more often than 3 years for the core vaccines, and oh yeah, they probably protect for life, but 3 years is okay for some reason. So anyway, this website says you know, parvo is like crazy contagious, and because of the persistence of this problem, we recommend that if your dog is in a high-risk area or you have a high-risk breed, and if you travel, then you should vaccinate for parvovirus every 6 months. And if your dog is going to be boarded, then you should booster that vaccination again before he goes into boarding. This is what frustrates me to no end. Why is it that veterinarians are allowed to say whatever they want with absolutely no burden of proof, but when we call them out on it, right? We're charlatans, we're BS artists, we're malicious, and we're evil. We're not. Trust me, we want to be able, when we have sick dogs, or even healthy dogs, we want to be able to trust the very people that we should be able to trust, right? But there's so many of us, and this is why the frustration, this is why there's so many bad feelings on either side, because we feel like we can't trust you right now. And I will tell you this,